ask a question. And this question touches on something that faith communities in general have as an asset for humanity. When we look at the climate crisis, particularly for youth, there are feelings of despair. There are feelings of hopelessness, of not wanting to contribute to it, of not wanting to continue or see a way out. In the next 10 minutes, maybe if we can all share together how our respective faith traditions, but more so that it's not too much of a burden, our own beliefs and understandings of those traditions can help to answer that question of, given this darkness in some parts of the world, as we've seen in New York City, literal darkness, can be impacted by the light of us coming together. So how can faith help to address these challenges that a lot of youth and a lot of people feel in today's times?
I think, as I was kind of suggesting, we have an incredible model in our faith beliefs and structures that really talks about how and what we have to protect. And I think if we lose our way, then we stray from that. But we also have an incredible mechanism of generosity, of volunteering, of care, and that's what we have to tap into. But I guess having been, I've been a university president now for some 13, 14 years. I've been working in the academy in Australia with Aboriginal communities for 30 years before that. And, the one thing that really connected everybody was a sense of the importance of a shared space, a shared world. And I think this is where the faith communities really have to do a better job of working together, because we do a great job across our communities. And I think you see in this panel that there's an opportunity for us to show how partnership can be very powerful. And I think our youth, if they're discouraged, sometimes it's because they see conflict. They see, especially the adult world, not communicating well, or communicating through, if not violence, certainly a type of unmovable position, unshakable position. And I think it's really the faith communities that can show a way and have to demonstrate it, of working together for something that's bigger than just self and self-interest.
I think it is important not to shelter young people too much from knowledge and understanding of injustice and disruption. In Jewish circles, we have a very strong emphasis on weaving lament into the liturgical year. And in this current generation, our children are still raised very much with an awareness of World War II and the Holocaust and the broad devastation that caused. And what they are also taught as part of that is challenges come in cycles. People can come to their senses, get together, rebuild, revitalize, and renew once again. But I don't think that we can easily get to inspiring that hope without letting them know that they actually, their own generation, has risen out of past devastations. And I know this is applicable to other communities represented in the room, but just to humbly stay on the path, I'm speaking only of my own. Thank you.
Personally, I'm realizing I've come to a point, having grown up a news junkie, I can't anymore. I grew up in Nova Scotia. To see what's happened in this past month, it's just unimaginable. There have never been forest fires in Nova Scotia in my nearly 60 years. So to have friends who've been evacuated just outside of Halifax, to just as recently as last year, been visiting the South Shore, which is now on fire, it's heart-wrenching. It's despair. But from a faith perspective, and from the Christian tradition, two scriptures come to mind. One would be St. John's Gospel, chapter 1, where he says, "The light shines in the darkness, but the darkness has not overcome it." So there is that. And so I went to seminary, and my favorite were Old Testament studies, just so you know. The book of Lamentations in the Old Testament, which is a very dark tome. It's written in the aftermath of the destruction of Jerusalem. The holy city has been laid waste. The people have been exiled. It's a catastrophe. The city is in ruins, sackcloth and ashes. It's, I believe, 5 chapters long. And then right in the middle, we call it a chiasm. The center verses of those 5 chapters say, "Great is thy faithfulness. Your mercies are new every morning," speaking to the Creator. So for those of us who hold to a faith tradition, or indeed who hold to no particular faith tradition, but the strength of the human spirit, I would say, for any individual, there's going to be tragedy, there's going to be calamity. Nobody is exempt. But I think we've shown ourselves to be a very adaptive species. We didn't get to be 8 billion by some fluke or accident. And I think times of stress and distress and crisis, we have shown remarkable capacity to come together to find solutions. So I would offer that hope from a faith and from a simply human perspective. If we choose to, we can find a better, a good way, as our Indigenous friends would say, we can find that good way forward, which we have no choice but to do so. And so despite my province being on fire, I choose to believe we will work together to find a better way forward.
In Gurbani, our Guru tells us, treat gold and iron the same. Whether something good is happening or something bad is happening, treat it the same. So try to have that grit and that ability to deal with life's ups and downs, including what's happening around us with respect to the environment. One of the things we're taught is to always stay in Chardi Kala, which is always stay in high spirits. And there's always, we don't talk about this often, but in a lot of faith traditions, there's also a lot of humor. And that humor helps to lift us up to deal with what we're dealing with. So the Sikhs kind of created their own language, kind of slang, I should say. Several hundred years ago, the government of the time was attacking them. They were hiding in the jungles. They were using the jungle for protection. But, this is in India, in the Punjab, and there's lots of predators around. And if ever one of them wanted to leave the camp to, go have a wee, go to the washroom, for want of a better term, he would say, "I'm just going to go chase away a cheetah." It was using that language. They knew they were in despair, but turning everything into something humorous and positive. And I think, especially for myself with teenage and young adult children who are from the internet world, so many of us here did not grow up in the internet world, they are flooded with information. So I know for my middle child, when he was about 12, 13, he downloaded one of these news apps, and just, going on from what you had mentioned, we actually had to take the app off because he was getting notifications of every little thing that was happening. And originally we thought, okay, yeah, download the BBC News app and, you'll get to know what's happening in the world, but the notifications were creating anxiety. So as parents of children who are of this world where they're flooded with information, we need to kind of teach them how to digest that information and realize what is and isn't important. And maybe a little bit of history, that there's been horrific things that have happened in the past. There've always been despair, but there's also always been hope. The flip side of the same coin, stay in Chardi Kala and do your best that you can. Thank you.
We always have to have hope. Yes, there are hard times. Yes, there are difficult times sometimes. But eventually, as human beings, the way Allah has designed us, we will overcome it. Right? So it doesn't matter if Highway 1 is blocked, Ironworker Memorial's backed up. right? We're not moving even an inch. Eventually, after a few hours, it's going to clear, and we eventually get to go home. We can't live with this concept that traffic's blocked, I can't get home, I can never get home. We will get home, right? So we cannot lose hope. We cannot lose sight of hope throughout our life, regardless of whatever trial or tribulation that we're going through, right? Whether it's climate change, whether it's micro level, macro level problems that we have in our life, the biggest thing that should motivate us is hope, right? And if I can couple this with another verse of the Quran, Allah says that وَالَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا فِينَا لَنَهْدِيَنَّهُمْ سُبُلَنَا. So if you make an effort, we will guide you, right? It's inevitable that we don't. So we will guide you if you make an effort. So effort is on our part, and we might get to see the results if we're lucky, and we might not get to see the result, right? The efforts, like if I was just to talk about the BC Muslim Association that I belong to, the effort that our pious predecessors made in early 50s and 60s, right? We are reaping that effort. Now we have a mosque that we can go to. We have a community that we can belong to, right? They did not get to see, unfortunately, they did not live that long to see the Muslim community at large today, but eventually it came about. Our job is to make effort. Our job is not to bring about results spontaneously. Results will come about, right, in their due time. Our job is just to make an effort. And as a responsible human being on earth, all we have to do is ask ourselves, how much effort am I making to bring that change? All right, thank you.
Shukran. There's a narration that if you are a farmer and you're planting a seed and you know that tomorrow is the day of judgment, it's a game over, right? The end game, you know it. You should still have faith and plant your seed, right? It's like almost a ridiculous level of optimism, right? So it's important for us to understand that we all can bring something together to address this challenge, that we can all inspire in each other. I was inspired, right, by each of our speakers about how we can do this. So I want to thank all of you again. A big round of applause, folks, for our first panel.